Mick, I don't know what's happening in Melbourne, but over here there is confusion, and Jack Viney cannot get a game.
Yes, I'm a little bit confused, like most people. You there, lads?
Yep.
Yeah.
Confused about what? I mean, Mick.
Well, I'm confused about people making a statement in a game that has been predominantly a contact sport for over 100 years. And look, there's only one way out of this, and only one way out of it. And starts at a 5-year-old Oz kick that right now they're not allowed to tackle, but they're allowed to bump.
Mm.
All right? So we are already saying to kids, don't tackle, but you can bump. Now, we know as they get older, they're allowed to tackle, but can't bump. So I say that the only way, it's a bit like with the umpires saying, listen, we're going to see if we can make them full-time, but we can't take umpires that are rocket scientists to accountants to engineers to this, and we can't pay them that money. So therefore, we're going to have to start introducing as soon as they come out of school, we give them a career in umpiring. So therefore, they don't become whatever they become straight out umpires. We have to teach our footballs at 5 to say, no, you can't bump, and it's not disgraceful to actually jump out the way.
Mick, is there anybody in the game courageous enough to say that and to demand it, or even float it? Because no one's coming out and saying just ban it, and all this will go away.
Well, it's got to start at 5, because by my little grandson, I go and see him as regularly as I can, and we have a kick at the football, and he bumps into me, and he knocks, tries to knock me over, and does all this stuff, because he's allowed to. So if we're going to introduce this thing as such a rational, revolutionary method in our system, then stop it at the young age. So therefore, as they get older, the game gradually becomes a non-bumping sport, because we have been taught my little Zachy, he's been taught to bump now at 5, and at some stage he's going to be taught to how to tackle at 7 or whatever it is. So if we're going to do this, we've got to start at a young age, because there's no way Jack Viney, his instinctive passive play is to hold his ground. I mean, look, it's difficult for me because it's funny because I got home tonight and Paul Roos was quoted as saying something about his player, and I'm saying, well, hang on now. My wife said to me, is he allowed to say that? Don't you get fined for saying that? And I said, well, you used to. I'm not 100% sure. We sit with a comment, or sit with a reason, or sit with some sort of capacity to discuss these sort of things. And I'm still confused about that for a start off. But in his case, clearly, I believe that from looking at it, and again, this is just looking at it through a TV eye, not the game eye, he approached the ball. He saw that it going to happen. He braced himself, and contact was made to him. He was part of it, but there was more stuff coming towards him than what he was towards that player.
Viney had eyes on the ball for me, so Mick, that's right.
Well, he did have his eyes on the ball. He did have his eyes on the ball, but he also was in line with the ball. You don't run around the football. You don't run around the football. So he was in line with the football, and he braced himself for contact. And I've seen this happen before. Jimmy Clement, my thing, he did that. He broke his own cheekbone, and he was the aggressor. And he broke his own cheekbone. And I think we're all totally bamboozled by this.
I can't believe that AFL Council, Jeff Gleeson, and I know they're independent, the AFL Tribunal, okay, and I know he's got a legal background, but he does represent the AFL because this verdict is going to, reverberate through the AFL. I can't believe he could say that Viney had an option to jump out the way. He did have another option. He didn't.
No. Well, looking at it through my eyes, again, through just watching it through my eyes briefly, the only option was to stand his ground.
Yeah, and the other thing is the penalty cannot be based solely on the outcome or the injury, and it feels like, for me, that is the reason. It's got to be based on the action. Yeah,
I was no doubt about that. We've too often seen in AFL football where the slightest thing sometimes can give a severe injury, whereas a real big two players go at each other, they hit each other, bounce off, get up, run around, and nothing said because there's no injury. I agree that we've got to be very... Look, if it's a deliberate action and the player misses 6 weeks because of a deliberate poor action, he should be 6 weeks. He should be 6 weeks. This was discussed some time ago that type of injury that's reckless, intentional, and causes a player to miss a month of football, 6 weeks of football with a broken jaw, you should be out at the same time. But there's no, to my way of thinking, and I've got to be careful here, but I loathe to try to get into people's head to say that if I was in Jack Viney's body, that this would be any different. But looking at what he took, there's no way knowing he thought, I'm going to break this bloke's jaw. That's one, so therefore you can give away intent. Two, is it reckless? Well, they're going to deem it reckless because they're going to say, well, he should have gone in and led with his own chin or led with his chest or whatever. So therefore, our utter instinct to protect our own bodies in this, which in football it is to turn side on and put the chin behind your own shoulder. I mean, that's a boxing thing. It's where we grew up with this. If you're going to protect your chin, you put it underneath your shoulder, and you put your shoulder in front of something. If you're going to get whacked in the face, the instinct is put your hand up and you try to protect yourself if you see it coming. So yeah, Viney, in my instance, looking at this, he's slightly late. He goes to protect himself, leans in, bang, he gets hit. And unfortunate. It's an unfortunate injury. It's a very unfortunate to see a player with a broken jaw out of this.
Mick, am I being over dramatic? And I have all day to suggest that this is a deal breaker for players because they're going to be confused and in two minds. Coaches for what they teach. More importantly, the fans, us, Benny Barbecues. I call us Benny Barbecues, Mick, that watch the game. Am I being over dramatic to suggest that this is a deal breaker, a landmark line in the sand case?
No, Rowie, it won't be, because you know why? Because we've seen similar cases in the last 2 or 3 seasons, and we're going to see similar cases after this event.
Okay.
And because we have grown up with the instinct to bump and the instinct to protect ourselves and the instinct that when there's pace and two men hit each other from a fair distance or wherever there's close in, they're still going to go for football, we are going to continue to see this because we're going to see players attack the football. Because there's only one football, and we've been taught from a very young age that you must attack the football. So that's what I'm saying. It's only now that a 5-year-old who's doing Auskick has got to be taught substantially different type of rules. That the time he's 18 and playing and there's a chance to be drafted, he now knows that between 5 and 18 there is a thing that says you cannot bump, and therefore it's not against any cultural thing that you can actually step out the way and let that player go through. Which we have seen in other sports. We do actually see in other sports. It's very common in Gaelic football. Players rarely have a contact because they grow up with that non-contact. We rarely see we don't like to see the knee up in the assault in rugby, and yet that bloke is penalised severely with front-on tackle. He puts his knee up because again sometimes it's instinctive, but you got to do that side on. So look, we are victims of our past. There's no question about that. And unfortunately, we're going to be victims of rules that state that you can't have it's reckless if your shoulder or any part of you actually hits someone's head. And that's going to be, look, we've been told that, but nonetheless, instinctively, that player he goes towards the football, instinctively he protects himself, and unfortunately that's, I can't see him getting out of this, but it's still very, very frustrating.
Mick, I've got to declare my hand. I think he's in genuine strife. Rowie and I opposed on this one. Where do you think the AFL Players Association should sit on this? And Rowie and I discussed this before. If they're overseeing the game for the players or helping the players out, surely they've got to be heard on this one. And they've been so quiet. They haven't made a noise on this one. I find that very surprising.
Well, yeah, I don't know whether it's really in there. No, I don't think.
Don't think they should buy into it?
Well, they can buy into it and say that the player's stiff, but let's clarify the rules. The rules actually are very, very. They're very clear.
Yep.
They're very clear. In point of actual fact, there's no doubt what the rules are. It's just that there's got to be a leverage somewhere that says, well, hang on, look, this is such a split-second incident where there's no intent. And someone's come out of it, unfortunately. Like, I could say the same about a bloke who broke his finger a week ago on a jumper. Was there any intent by the player to wriggle his backside at the psychological time when the player had hold his jumper and ripped his finger off? No, of course not. But nonetheless, he still broke his finger. Did it happen with? And we'll just keep going on like this with injuries. But it is clear. But what we've got to do as an industry is do something outside of at the junior level and bring players up, understanding that we've just got to say no bumping.
Yep.
If there's a bump, free kick it, because that's clearly what's happening at the moment. Is that we're seeing the slide-in rule for start off. We know there's a push in the back, pump in the back, whatever. We can't tunnel people, so we've already got it down so far that the next stage has got to be bumping is an infringement. Because let's face it, Bone, you're about the same size as me, but Rowie's a bit shorter. I think
don't make me run into you, Mick. I'm not running into you, fella.
I reckon I'm as tall as you, Bone.
Well, you may be. But if we run into a bloke who's 6 inches taller than us, we're going to run to his shoulder every time.
Yep.
And technically speaking, he gets free kick because he's taller. So therefore, the industry really has a worrying situation in regard to this bump. I remember a coach, I reckon it might have been Dennis Pagan, said, no, I'll tell you who it was. I know exactly who it was now. It was Mark Williams. Courageously, he had one of the most fearful players playing league football in Byron Pickett, and he said, at a coach's conference, he said, ban the bump because this player can't survive the game in its present format because when he attacks the football, inevitably he gets reported.
Yep.
And it was a courageous act by Mark Williams, and it was even further evidence that a player like Byron Pickett was virtually closed out of the game for a while because his assault on the ball was ferocious.
Oh.
But he was being not only free kicked, he was being reported too regularly under those rules. So, we virtually forced the player. Look, I'll better rephrase it. He wasn't forced out of the game, but he was restricted in the way he played.
Exactly. Michael Malthouse, our guest for North Point. Right, I'll say it again, the game needs to cater for accidental contact. Hey, Mick, we'll move on. Are these words here from Bryce Gibbs music to your ears?
Still under negotiations with the club. As far as I know, it's all going really well and really positive, so hopefully can get done soon. If it can be done tomorrow, it'll be done tomorrow, but can't rush these things, and like I said before, it's all positive and it's a good thing.
Our gut, Phil and I coached a bit with Bryce at Glenelg. Bone played with his dad, that he was always going to stay, so that's a good result, Mick.
Oh, if that's... Buddy said the same, and I think Eddie Betts said the same, but I've got to trust Bryce's way he spoke. He spoke very positively of the organisation, spoke very positively of his teammates and playing at Carlton. So I'll take that on face value that he's he's settled, and he actually does like, he does love the place. As he mentioned, he's been in Melbourne for eight years. There's no stopping him going back at some stage in his life, but he seems to be very settled. And the other thing is too, I regard him very highly. He's in the leadership group. I'd be very, very disappointed down the track that he doesn't actually attract one of the major roles, captain, vice captain, deputy vice captain. I think he's maybe slightly older than Mark, so perhaps he won't be captain, but certainly, I'd be very disappointed if he doesn't take over one of the other roles.
Well, Mick, we don't like to deal in rumour and innuendo here on 5AA. Melbourne Radio tonight. David Swartz on SEN spoke about this. So we'll get your comments after we listen to David Swartz.
It's my understanding that Carlton are super, super keen to keep him. In fact, the coach is really keen to keep him, and they want to build a side around him and Mark Murphy. And that 4 or 5 years has been put on the table, and it hasn't been ratified by the board yet.
How good a source?
Impeccable.
Has to be ratified by the board. What does that mean?
They may have knocked it on the head.
Is that true, Mick?
Oh, well, no, I don't know about the board's situation. That's the board for the board. The board's, in current flux. It's changing itself at the moment. We've, from Stephen to Mark, who will take over. All I know is the first part of it's totally right. I do want Bryce to stay. I do want him to be part of a football club that we think we can get together and go forward. We've got, we're struggling this year. There's no denying it. We haven't played anywhere near what we wanted to do, and it's going to be Bryce Gibbs, Mark Murphy's, and that like that will get us out of this. And I'd be delighted to have him on board so I can work with him. So that first part is definitely right. The second part, I have no idea. I don't talk to the board about those things.
But you want him to have a 5-year deal, so everything's ticked away with you and Bryce, and now it's just a matter of the two parties agreeing on terms. So he's not going anywhere, Mick.
Well, I can't say about the 5 years because I don't deal with players in their terms of their contract. I have say Andrew McKay will come to me and say, he's out of contract, he's out of contract. What's your suggestions? And you want him to be part of your system? And I categorically said I want Bryce Gibbs here. I enjoy him as a young bloke. I think he's a wonderful young man. I love him as a footballer. I think he'll only get better as he takes on more responsibility. And, when you give people responsibility, they grow, and he's growing. He's growing already as a player. And for my part of it, I want him there, and I've suggested that to Andrew McKay. He in turn talks to the board, and I don't know what players are on. He may come to me and say, listen, do you think he's worth a 3 or 4 or 5 year contract? I think that's private. That part is private. But I think the fundamentals are, yes, I do want him, and I want him to be part of a side going forward, and hopefully a successful side going forward.
Gil McLachlan via the CBA has already hinted free agency is going to be loosened up even more in favour of the player. He's saying if combined you've played 8 years but at 2 different clubs. See, right now it's got to be the one club.
Yep.
Say you had 3 years at West Coast and then 5 years at, let's say, Carlton, you'll be able to be a free agent. Would you be in favour of that, Mick, as a club?
Oh, well, look, you know my thoughts on free agency.
I know. Honestly, it's opening right up.
It's in, and it's more to do with the law. I did say to you guys, it'll be a 2-tier system in a very short time, and I will not only stick to that, I can't wait for Gillum to actually knock on my door if that's what he's going to do. I don't know if it's the phone call or knock on the door to talk to each of the coaches, because I would like to talk to him about more than just how the game looks aesthetically. I'd like to talk to him about where the game's going and put my thoughts. I am probably one of the very few people in the competition that's actually played in the VFL, coached in the VFL, and coached clearly in the AFL, and I know the difference. And I know I've seen Moneyball work, and I've seen systems work where 3 or 4 clubs dominate, and they will continue to dominate. And I've seen 4 or 5 clubs that don't even look like it, and they will continue to not look like it, and let's make it the numbers. And they wonder why their crowds are small, membership is small, sponsorship is hard to come by. Just I hope he knocks on the door, and I can give him what I believe to be the truth of the matter over a period of time, and whether they take it on board or not, I'm not interested. All I can do is to say that I am fearful for the way the game is, and I want to see a very vibrant competition, which it's not.
Well, let's hope they engage you, Mick, in that debate. Hey, as always, thanks for the chat. Brilliant.
Good on you, lads, and I look forward to seeing you guys, and it's a pleasure.